our speaker, Ms. Shreya Arora Mehta. And we're really proud to have you, ma'am, on this board today. Ms. Shreya Arora Mehta is presently the Secretary of the Delhi Legal Services Authority South, and she joined the Delhi Legal Judicial Services in the year 2010, and since then she has worked as a metropolitan magistrate and a civil judge in the last 10 years. However, before becoming a judicial officer, Ms. Shreya also had gained diverse experience in the field of law by practicing as an advocate, and has also worked as a law researcher in the High Court of Delhi. Ms. Mehta believes that whatever she does has to be done with hard work, perseverance, and dedication. And much so, with such dedication and hard work, she had topped the Delhi Judicial Services examination and also has a degree of master's in the field of law to her credit. Further, Ms. Shreya also has to her credit many of the publications in the field of criminology, victimology, cyber crimes, environmental laws, criminal justice process system are a few to name. So on that note, I welcome Shreya ma'am on this board to throw light on the topic of webinar today, which is victimology, legal representation and compensation. Thank you so much, ma'am, for taking out your valuable time. Over to you.
Thank you, Nitesh. Thank you, Takshi. Lovely to be on board with my college people, and we all are from same law school, and we've all learned law together. So of course, it's great to be here. And then the topic for today is of utmost importance because very few people, when we sit in court, we see very few people know about the right way to go about it. So when Nitesh and me had an interaction that what topic he can do it, which people may not know. So then, yes, he also shared the insights on the witness protection. Like if you ask a layman, they always say that the witness protection, if there's a threat, let me go to the police. So police for witness protection, yes, you can let the police know, but so far as your trial, which is going on, to that extent, the police cannot give you the protection which is warranted in that trial. So yes, we had this topic for all of you, and we thought that victimology, legal representation, and compensation, this would include the witness protection, which is there at its place in Delhi, and in fact, now post the Supreme Court judgment, it's at its place all over India, and also the victim compensation. So I would in detail deal with both the schemes with all of you, so that anytime if the ones who are present here get the chance or have a case where they feel that the witness protection is required or their compensation needs to be granted to the victim, I will make you understand the procedure to go about it. Will it be possible to share a screen? Yeah, if the host could allow me to share the screen, I can share a screen also with you. So till the time the share screen option comes, let me just, you all may be thinking that victimology, how victimology is related to witness protection and victim compensation. See, we all know that the trial system which we have in our country is adversarial. And when we all were studying law, then they were everyone used to say, why only accused rights are being talked about? Why victim rights and why the concern of the victim is not highlighted? But this was back then 15 years before. In last 15 years, we have had a great development in the field of victimology. So we now take care in the sense the victim gets a good hearing. In fact, all of you would be aware that if the wakalatnama is filed on behalf of the victim through the public prosecutor, that is very well accepted in the court. So there are private lawyers representing victim. There are legal aid lawyers which are representing victim. So you can represent the victim. Earlier it used to be that only the public prosecutor used to pursue the case and used to just be with the victim. But that's way back. Now the victimology concept has grown to another level. So I will just 1 second, let me just open my PowerPoint.
Yes, Shreya, yes, we have allowed you to share the screen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So is my screen visible to everyone? The screen is visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So the victim, you all know, victim, who is a victim? Anyone who has suffered harm, which would be physical, which would be emotional, mental, or economical. Any person who has loss of any such thing would be a victim. We all know that. We know what is victimization. I will repeat. Victimization, there are two kinds. One is primary. Basically, are you all comfortable me speaking complete English, or you want English, or you want Hindi? Just let me know. Otherwise, I will continue the way I'm doing.
Ma'am, you can continue.
All right. So the victimization is the primary victimization is when the offense is committed. So that's the first primary victimization. The secondary victimization is post-crime. So you all know how this post-crime victimization, the recording of the statement, the medical examination, different recording of statement in police station before the magistrate for 164, then when the charge sheet is filed, then the examination, cross-examination. So when, as defense lawyers, you all know that the victim is tired and the secondary victimization is going on, and to her, it's too much of giving of the statements, and there can be a lapse of memory. So as a defense counsel, this works on your credit, but now since all of you can also be the counsel for the victim, but then the secondary victimization needs to be addressed by the criminal justice process, which we have in India. So for this, what we did was this concept of victimology came in, which is just the study of this victimization, which is secondary victimization. What does it talk about? It talks about protection and compensation. So protection, how? So that the victim is confident enough to stand and depose what has happened, and depose to such a level that to also withstand the questions put in the cross-examination, and then administer the justice, the course of justice can then proceed. So it needs to be protection to such a level. So for that, what is important is the witness protection scheme. So the protection scheme, why we required this scheme and why people do not know about it. Like I've seen many people, they generally put an application before the concerned magistrate, the one who's hearing the case, or the court of session who's hearing the case. But then there's another mechanism where the application needs to go. This is not a judicial proceeding. It's a quasi-judicial. So this is a different mechanism which you all need to know. First and foremost, this witness protection deals with different categories of threat to the witness. So if you see, first threat could be to the life, that the accused or his family or his relatives are actually threatening the witness that if you depose, we will kill you or your family. So that this is during the investigation or trial. The other could be the reputation. Other could be the property. So that is being threatened, not the life. The third could be the intimidation and the simple harassment, that you come to court, we will see you. So this is not a direct threat of life. This is just an intimidation or a harassment, or if you depose, we will do this to you. So this is considered to be at the third level, but then yes, this is also a threat. Now, the most important thing is this. You all know there are 11 districts in Delhi. So each district has a district judge. So like in Saket, if you see, we have South and Southeast district. If you see Tees Hazari, we have Central district and West district. Every district has a district judge. So for this witness protection, a committee has been made for which the district judge of that district is the chairperson. The DCP, head of the police, is the member. And the chief public prosecutor, though the language used is head of the prosecution in the district, but we all know they are called chief public prosecutor. They are the member secretary. So these are the three people who sit for these meetings. The most important thing which all of you need to know is that the application for witness protection needs to be moved before the chief public prosecutor, who is the one who will take your application, number one, will call for a threat analysis report from the police, from DCP, On submission of that report, the committee will have its meeting, the district judge, the chief public prosecutor, and the DCP, who will then evaluate that what kind of protection needs to be given to the witness. So these are the things which we do. So this is to the other level. See, witness and accused do not come face to face during investigation or trial. The monitoring of the mail, telephone calls, temporary change of residence to a different place of town, close protection and patrolling near the witness house, concealment of identity by referring to the witness with a different name, installation of the security devices, changing or assigning an unlisted number, using vulnerable witness room, escort to the court or a state government vehicle. So these facilities are available, but people do not know about it. So if the application is moved in time before the chief public prosecutor, as and when the threat comes, so then even the escort can come for the victim or the witness. So this talks about victim as well as the witness, because there could be a case that the victim and witness are different. So there could be a public witness who wants protection, who's being threatened. So that person is also covered. So in-camera proceedings can happen. So this is the way we go about. So now coming apart from the protection which we give you, we also give the protection of identity. There are many times when, especially in the cases of child abuse, now there is a legislature, POCSO is there, which talks about clearly that the identity of the child needs to be protected. But in some cases, even a public witness, maybe he has a political background, he or she has a political background, or maybe he's in corporate. So this application can be moved before the chief public prosecutor simply for protection of identity. So this is because when I was talking to Nitesh, I was like, these are the things all of you can use in your practice, and you can be the warriors for the same, because these things are at its place, but people don't know about it. So once you know about it, then you can do it. So anyone you feel that their identity once, like, because if they come to court and any newspaper covers them, so that would be a more injury to their reputation. So then the protection of identity under the scheme can be done. Similarly, you can also ask for change of identity. So change of identity is also, you would be wondering, how could the change of identity work? There are cases, there are instances where they've worked. They're actually issued proper government I cards also, but that doesn't mean that their property rights or their bank account, whatever they were manning before, they go on a ride. No, that is not the case. That gets protected with this order. Similarly, relocation. There are many cases, relocation is at times done, because when you feel, then when they actually, then when the application comes and they say that even the police is with them, we are not getting enough protection. So the person who has been given for our protection at our gate is not doing enough, and he's missing at times, he's not reporting at times. So this way, then in such cases, even the witness is relocated. So this was the judgment which came and which said that this scheme needs to be applicable all over India. So now this witness protection scheme, so far as its functioning goes, is applicable all over India. I need to apprise you all before I come to vulnerable witness room that now in Delhi, the follow-up is to such an extent that these people, like once the order is passed by the committee, so we follow it up. We followed, not that we pass the order that protection be given and just let it be. No, we follow it up. On the scheme, if you read, it is in such a way that even a district judge office or a district judge can call you and ask you, how is your protection going on? So in fact, I had an opportunity, I was holding with my district judge, and we were the ones who called the witness. And we call them and we say, how is the protection going on for you? Who is the person? Is he having 1 star here? Is he having 2 stars? Because we had given the orders for the sub-inspector to be there, to be watchful for the witness. So we ensured, because the person need not know that whether the person who's police officer who's standing is a sub-inspector or not. So we made sure, and it was a random call, no intimation given to the witness, no intimation given to the police. And we just picked up the phone before the meeting, not in the meeting, because in the meeting, the DCP would be there. So we thought, let us assess whether the protection is proper or not. So that also, that follow-up is done from time to time. But then I would put it all to all of you that so far the cases are less. So yes, we are able to do it, but then yes, but then even if the cases are increased, the mechanism needs to go. All of you, you're practicing lawyers, you would have seen the vulnerable witness room. It is there in every court complex. If you've been to the Saket court complex, must visit room. It's a very well made and a very good infrastructure there that the witness and the accused do not come face to face. So this witness room is actually used in the cases of child abuse, transgenders, and wherever there's a vulnerable group, marginalized group of witnesses, we take the deposition in this room. So this is all about the witness the witness protection scheme. So it's important, you're all lawyers, for you it's important that the application needs to be filed before the chief public prosecutor, and it is not a court proceeding. The meeting happens, and the meeting is convened between the DCP, district judge, and the chief public prosecutor. On the basis of the threat analysis report, a hearing is given to the witness, and accordingly the orders are made, either for identity change, relocation, or protection. Accordingly the orders are made. Victim compensation scheme, that's another scheme, the topic for today, because if you talk about victimology, the protection, we've talked about it. Compensation is an important facet. It is at its place. We all know in law school days, we used to read restitution. The word restitution has come up to all of us. So in the Supreme Court has from time to time used this word restitution. And then in 1982, far back in 1982, compensation was granted. The restitution of the victim was given. And there was also a judgment of Bodhisattva Gautam Subrat Chakravarti, 1996 Supreme Court. So where a rape victim was given final compensation by the court, and it became a limelight, and it was like the court ordered the compensation to the victim. So this was, for the first time it was initiated. At that time, these schemes weren't there. But then in 2011, in Delhi, we got this scheme at the government level. The scheme was again changed and amended, and we got a next scheme in the year 2015. That scheme did not specifically cover the sexual victims, the sexual victims. So this 2018 scheme came in view of the judgment of the Supreme Court, and we came up with this scheme. And now this scheme is divided into two parts. One is general, and the other is for sexual victims. So I would be dealing with the same. Eligibility for the victim for compensation. This is very important because many a times applications come before us and they say that we are a victim. So forgive me for the spelling of dependent. So yes, so if you see this, it is important that the offense needs to be committed. If there's no offense, then the scheme would not be applicable. There are many people who come and they say we are victim. So we say, was there any FIR registered? They say no. So I said, was there any offense? They say no. How can that make you eligible? So very important part, the person should be a victim or his dependent. Loss or injury must have been caused. Person requires rehabilitation. So the situation of the victim is such that we need to rehabilitate the person. Not have been compensated under any other scheme. The government has not given any scheme, any compensation or even court. But for that matter, I would like to prize each one of you that at times the court grant compensation or the government, but then we take that in mind. If that is less, then in addition to that compensation, we grant the compensation. This is an important thing which you all need to know, because we all, as a lawyer, you all may have accident cases coming to you. So the accident cases victim are entitled to compensation under the scheme. And if they die, their dependents are eligible. But then anyone who has got the compensation from the Motor Accident Claim Tribunal, they would not be covered under this. So in short, in the language of legal professionals and advocates, basically where the untrace is accepted by the Metropolitan Magistrate. You all would be knowing about untrace being accepted. When a FIR is lodged and the person is not found, then the police files the untrace before the magistrate and the court accepts the untrace. So in those situations, the case do not go to the MACT court. In that situation, the person would be coming to the Legal Services Authority for the grant of compensation. Offense, I've stated what is an offense. There are people, there are applications which came before me, I remember, and so for them, offense could be anything. They said, we are saying it's an offense. So no, offense needs to be offense under the Indian Penal Code or any other law for the time being in force. So the scheme applies to the victim and their dependents who has suffered loss, injury as a result of the offense committed. Acid attack cases, we have a special provision. I'm sure because acid attack cases, you as lawyers would not have dealt as such because it comes directly to our notice, to the district judge, to the Secretary Legal Service Authority. So as soon as we get a FIR of the acid attack case, basically it's done quickly. We grant rupees 1 lakh as compensation within 15 days. And this is done as soon as we get to know. Within 7 days, we pass the order. And additionally, after that, within 2 months, we grant 2 lakh rupees. So this is, I'm talking about interim compensation, not final compensation. So interim compensation for acid attack victims, I've told you that we give 1 lakh, 2 lakhs, but then we also give them medical help. So there are victims, I remember there was a case before me where there was a paneer vendor, and then someone approached him and he said that I need some paneer, and he said no, it's over. So that person got into some vengeance. He said, you are keeping it for your house and you're not giving it to me. I'm so and so, my family is into gold purchase and sale. I will let you know, you give it to me. He said, I don't have it, how can I give it to you? But then that boy, the young boy, he was 24, the accused, and the victim was 18 years old or 17 years old. He came back with 3 boys. All the 4 boys held him and made him drink the acid. So in that situation, I remember because as soon as we got to know that this has happened, then we wrote to the AIIMS also to grant the free medical help as much as required. And then we also granted him 1 lakh initially, and then 2 lakhs for the medicines, for food, everything. The family needs help. So accordingly. So the interim relief is not restricted to you in acid attack cases. It is applicable to every case. So wherever there's a loss of life or wherever there's a disability, there's an injury, so interim relief can always be applied before the Legal Service Authority. So which can be first aid facility, medical benefits, and it could be either of them. So the medical treatment can also be provided, and which is, of course, we communicate with the government and they provide you the free medical treatment. This is important. So this is not the sexual survivors victim. This is normal case. So we give them a preloaded cash card also. So far as we have hardly been issued because hardly been any cases coming up for this interim compensation. But then yes, the scheme talks about this preloaded cash card and which can be used. This is very important for you, the dependents. So the married daughter is not a dependent. Major son is not a dependent. A brother, not a dependent. So wife, husband, father, mother, grandparents, unmarried daughter, and minor children. Only these people are entitled to compensation if there's a loss of life. We have this fund. Of course, this is not for your applicability. This is more for the applicability of the organizations which we work with. That yes, many times courts also grant they put cost and they say that the cost we deposited in the victim compensation fund. So it can be, so it's basically for companies who wish to do CSR. So the donations and contributions can come in this fund. So the procedure of application, which is applicable for all of you. The victim and the dependent can file himself or herself. SHO can send us the application, and also the court, suo motu. And even we can, in fact, there were a lot of cases, like you read it in the newspaper and you call for a report from there. Like, in fact, I remember like 3 months back, I got a case, and it was a case of Nepsarai, and I read it in the newspaper and I called for a report. It was a child sexual abuse case. So there was a van where the child was abused. 3 children were abused by the driver of the van. So I called for a report as soon as I reached court, and I realized that yes, this has happened, and he sent me the FIR. So suo motu, I took over the case, and suo motu, I called for the report, and I granted them the interim compensation, because the family is entitled for the interim compensation, so that the family do not make the children leave the school or for the medical help. So suo motu also, the court can grant the compensation under the scheme. So method of disbursement of compensation, yes, I will be sharing with all of you. The amount is high. The amount is even going to 10 lakhs, but then we do not give 10 lakhs like there's a grant and we give you complete 10 lakhs. No, that's not the case at all. What we do is we give you 25%. We give you 25% for initial expenses. The 75% is deposited in the fixed deposit for a minimum period of 3 years. And in case if that person requires it, they can move the application before us, and then we can evaluate whether there's an urgency or not. But on the very first go, we don't grant 100% compensation. So initially it's 25%, then 75% goes in fixed deposit for 3 years. And then if there is an urgency in the family, maybe a marriage or any situation, maybe any surgery needs to be done. So that application comes, and accordingly we evaluate the situation and we grant it. For the minor victim, 80% is put in the fixed deposit instead of 75%. This is very important for you as lawyers to know that the dependency certificate is issued from, like I explained it to you, like in Delhi, we have 11 districts. So 11 districts have got 11 district judges. So similarly, we have SDMs, ADMs, and we have DM office. So these DM office in every area, so they are also called the district magistrates. So they are to issue you dependent certificate. So in case they don't give the dependency certificate and you let us know, then we say, then you give us an affidavit. And at times we get that affidavit verified from the DM, because these DM, they generally respond to our request quicker than the request of the layperson. But then yes, we work accordingly. So the dependent certificate from the office of DM, in case you have not received it, then it can always be an affidavit can be filed. Appeal will also lie. Appeal as to the quantum of the compensation, because this is passed by the secretary, will go to the chairperson. So because it's on the quasi judicial side, so it can be delay, can also be condoned. But yes, it would depend on the ground stated for the delay. So where to file the application? You can file in our central office, which is at Patiala House Court. You can file, there are 11 districts, I've already told you. You can file it in Saket, South and Southeast, Tisazari, Rohini, wherever there are district league offices we have. You can also file it on the online portal. We have these, you can also file in the court where the hearing is going on, the trial court. So this is important. When we award the compensation, we see the gravity of the case, to what extent the rehabilitation is required. We see how much expenditure the victim's family has incurred, the loss, impact of employment. Like supposedly if the person is the sole bread earner and he's died and he was only 28 and he has 2 children, mother, father, widow. So then accordingly the determination is made and we award the compensation. Relationship of the parties is seen, because at times we see that the wife has applied, the widow wife with children, and even the mother father have applied. So then they need to be taken into a scenario that the wife has these many years with the children's education, the parents have different amount of years left, so their old age thing. So we take that into account. Single incident or over a period of time. If victim contracted STD or HIV, we take care of that. If any disability suffered and its nature. In case of death, Yeah, I've already shared it with you. We see the age, income, etc. How much was that person earning, financial condition and loss of victim. We see, or any other factor which we feel, because we do this initial inquiry with them. We talk to these people. So any other factor if stated, we take that into mind. So procedure is simple. There's a committee where there is a session level judge, secretary, DLSA, and chief public prosecutor. We sit and we evaluate. We even take reference, I've already told you, it can come from the victim, SHO, or the court on its own motion. So inquiry is done at the office of DLSA only. I've told you that we inquire from them, and any other factors which we need to, we often interview them. Sometimes a lawyer interview them, sometimes at times I directly, because if the case is of such a nature, then I directly inquire from them what happened, how did it went, and how much was the injury. So we take that into account. Additional material. There are times when we call for the additional material verification from some authorities, some offices. We are very much authorized under this scheme to call for the same. And yes, this needs to be completed within 60 days. That's the important facet. It needs to be completed. But at times what happens is that it's very important that good you all are hearing. Many a times we get the application and then they say that we have applied for the dependent certificate or a disability certificate. So that has not been granted. So the inquiry remains pending for the grant of certificate. For this is the reason that 2015 scheme was amended. And we said if you're not able to get the dependency certificate from the DM office, give an affidavit. But then getting a disability certificate, yes, it still takes time. So that could be an exception that the inquiry goes above 60 days. We also initiate the refund proceedings where there is a acquittal and we feel, yes, no offense has been committed. So then there is a provision for taking compensation back from the victim. So yes, or during inquiry, the facts stated are false, or the appellate court or the trial court gives finding that criminal complaint and the allegations were false. So we take back. So this is the schedule we have. You can see the amount of compensation, the minimum and the maximum. 3 lakhs to 10 lakhs, 2 lakhs to 5 lakhs. Look at the amount. It's not less by any stretch of imagination. And this is over and above the free medical treatment which you get. So loss of any limb or part of body, 80% permanent disability or above, 2 lakhs to 5. Where there's 40 to 80% disability, 1 lakh to 3 lakhs. 20%, above 20%, but below 40%, 50,000 to 2 lakhs. So similarly, you can see the cases of victims of burning, serial number 10, victims of acid attack. You can all see the maximum amount which we give, 7 lakhs, 5 lakhs. So accordingly, in case the victim is less than 18 years of age, the compensation amount may be increased by up to 50% more than specified above. So this can also be increased in case it is a minor. I shared it with you that this new scheme has part 2, which is separate for women victims. So for women victims where there is a gang rape, it's 5 lakhs to 10 lakh, loss of life, 5 lakhs to 10 lakhs, rape, 4 lakh to 7 lakhs. So this is the schedule applicable to the women victims. So the earlier was applicable to women as well as men. So you can see this is the amount, and this is very well stated. If you all Google victim compensation scheme of 2018, or it's there and you can just get it on Google search. So this is the data till 29th February 2020. So we've got around 712 beneficiaries. You can see the amount. Acid attack we've done, and this accident cases we've done, murder cases, rape cases, POXO cases. So we've done these many amount of compensation has already been disbursed. These are the details. You all are lawyers. You may all have it, but then yes. So the helpline number is 1516. So the legal service authority is in every court. So use these schemes as much as possible, and witness protection is not before the legal services authority. I would make it clear, though I've dealt with it, because I feel when we talk about victimology, so equally we need to talk about this witness protection. This is in the domain of the district judge direct. This is not covered under the legal service authority, before the legal service authority. But then I thought that since we are talking about it, I should not take this only topic as victim compensation, because if you're appearing for any person who's victim, you need to know witness protection as well as the victim compensation. So this is all. You can stop sharing the screen. Yes, please.
Yes, Jyoti, if you can see, there are questions lying on the board. Kindly take one by one with the ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am, for speaking to our participants on the topic victimology and compensation. I felt that your remarks were really timely. Now the questions, I'll just post to you one by one. The first question is, how to deal with the false claims or puppet victims under the scheme?
Yeah. So see, we all know that there are, like in courts, all of your lawyers, you would be knowing there are not always the real victims. There are people who pretend to be victims. So yes, these schemes, the inquiry at the district level is done in such a way that we evaluate. Like I would share it with you. You all know these cases of rape where there's a false promise to marry. So there is a relationship between boyfriend girlfriend. They are physical with each other, and then the boyfriend says, I will not marry you, and then she registers, gets a FIR registered, and the case is filed for rape, because she takes the plea that consent was taken on the pretext of marriage, but then did not happen. So those cases, yes, we do not grant interim compensation. So that's a clear cut, because we wait for the trial to get over and for the trial court to give the verdict that yes, that the rape is committed, and then accordingly we give the final compensation. So yes, the inquiry done at our level is only to the assess of the interim compensation, but then yes, that inquiry makes us identify because ultimately the truth would come after the trial. But then for the purposes of the compensation, we do as much inquiry as we can to assess.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is, ma'am, what's your opinion on if we require more restraint on media reporting of sensitive cases for protection of victims? Have you ever come across any such case where you thought that excessive media reporting has done more harm than good?
See, media reporting at times is like important. Like at times they have this plea of freedom of speech and expression, and they say that we do not come to the fair trial at all. We do not hamper the fair trial. But then yes, as a judge, I would share it with you. Like I would not like to read the newspaper reports before I sit in the court to hear the trial. Because I have, my colleague did Nirbhaya case, and I remember, and I asked her, like I said, I'm reading so much and I don't want to share it with you. She said, yes, even I'm not reading my newspaper. She said, you cannot read the newspaper and sit in the court, because the newspaper may be giving you some, yes, you may learn something from the newspaper, but then you have to be impartial and you need to be fair to the people who are before you. So media reporting, yes, these days now the Supreme Court has come up with a very beautiful guidelines on how to protect the victim and the witness. So those are at its place. There was a writ petition, I remember, which was filed in High Court, where one of the biggest media house did not follow it. And now it's being followed very religiously. They don't give the name. And you can go through those guidelines of the Supreme Court on their website if they are there. And I think now it's very well. Now, like Nirbhaya case was the start when we all identified the Nirbhaya trial. But now the trial is fair enough and the media reporting is to the limited extent.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is, ma'am, you said you gave interim compensation to victim of acid attack to the tune of rupees 1 lakhs and thereon. How did you verify the reality of the facts?
So we inquire from it. See, we have all the authorities, which is like, you would have seen like a metropolitan magistrate can call for reports from anybody. That's the reason that legal service authority is also being manned by a judge. So like initially when I remember when I was posted in legal services authority, I was like, why am I posted here? But then I realized, because if this place is being manned by a person who's not a judge, then the necessary reports would not come. So we do take reports from the police, we do take reports from the DM, we do take reports from the public. And then of course the person who's coming before us knows that he or she is deposing before the judge. So then the veracity matters. So yes, we inquire from them. But then so far as acid attack case goes, frankly, I think the case speaks for itself. I remember the first case I dealt of acid attack. So I went and I met the victim in AIMS. And there was nothing, I knew this has happened. You can see the dislocation and you feel the only thing which you can do right now is to grant the interim compensation, which is 1 lakh plus 2 lakhs. So do that immediately.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is similar to what I've just asked, but I'll still ask this question. It says, do you think a very stringent and well-prescribed scrutiny is required for giving the victim compensation? I know it's a very sensitive question to pose, but can't there be a misuse of these schemes? And what is the detailed procedure to sieve out the cases which do not have merit?
See, it's if I may understand the question correct, it's in every court also. Like if you talk about domestic violence or a Mahila magistrate court, we often say that if there are no false cases, the true cases would be heard quicker. So false cases are everywhere. You all lawyers also know that they're everywhere, and we have to live with it. But then yes, there are the ways with the judge that we are able to identify that this case needs to be disposed of fast and there is truth involved in it. So yes, you do, but then evaluating in the initial inquiry, which is done at our level, we need to do it. No matter what, we do it in the sense this is initial inquiry. So if you can further explain me your question, to what extent are you asking, so I can let you know. But then initial inquiry is done at our end. We take reports from the police as well as the DM, and we get to know that this is done. So if once the FIR won't be registered if the offense is not committed. So that offense is committed. So initial inquiry reveals the scenario.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is, who is termed as victims to be eligible for being given the compensation? The second part to this question is it only persons who are physically assaulted or the other persons who suffered monetary losses by the offenses of snatching, theft, robbery, or dacoity?
See, I'll explain it to you. Yes, they are also covered. Wherever there's an injury, they are covered. So there's number one, the direct victim, loss of life. Victim not being there, victim is dead, his dependents are liable. So even there is an injury, grievous injury, I've shared it with you, the different disability, this percentage. And even if that is not there, if you're not able to get the disability certificate from the disability board, which is there in every government hospital, then we have another point in that, the cases which there is grievous injury. So in fact, if you're talking about robbery, dacoity, even I got one case when she was so badly, brutally beaten while the robbery was being done. And that was applied and victim compensation. So she's entitled for the same.
Thank you, ma'am. We have questions flowing, so I'll be taking up one by one. The next questions is, it says, don't you think that there is an overlapping of section 357 CRPC with the scheme of compensation that we have just discussed? How do you distinguish between the two?
Very smart question. No, there's no overlapping. This scheme is made to take the vision and the aim of that section further. So this scheme is in place because of that section itself. If you read the section, very intelligent question that you thought about it, that section also talks about the scheme. So if I told you that the application can be filed directly to us by the person who was injured, or the SHO can give us the application, or the court can send us the application, or we as a judge can suo motu take the cognizance and do the proceed for the victim compensation. But that section 357 and the scheme work together. So if any court feels that the scheme compensation should be granted, so that court would send the matter to us. So accordingly, so under that section, it would be sent to us and then we would proceed.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for giving us this distinction. The next question is, what method has been adopted by DLSA to propagate such scheme for the common man, because people are not aware about such scheme and even lawyers are not aware about such scheme.
So work from home. So work from home is these webinars with you. So I think that all of you now know, you tell 33 friends further. So we go like this. So we do these, like the legal aid lawyers who work for us. We have these community programs with Anganwadi workers and RWAs and everyone. From time to time, the legal aid lawyers who are there in our district, they keep doing these programs. And even we, as that matter, we can do it. So I remember as soon as Nitesh said, I said, no, this needs to be done. So yes, these programs only publicize it. And we also have radio jingles, and we also have social media pages, because these days social media works very well. And then during this COVID-19 lockdown, so we have used, though we were not so regular on the social media, so legal service has used the social media to the core, and we have been able to reach people as much we can. So yes, these programs which we are doing today, and we were doing these programs earlier also, but now we are doing it online.
Thank you, ma'am. Perhaps this is the last question we have. Ma'am, if the acquittal is done and the earlier victim is not able to return the interim compensation amount, or he absconds, then what is the remedy available?
No, then we take the proceedings with the help of the DM office, the recovery, the civil suit is filed.
Thank you, ma'am. I think that you have gratefully explained and answered all the questions that were posted by our participants. I now hand it over to Hazel, ma'am, for giving you a thanking note.
So thank you, Shreya ma'am, for giving us such a crisp yet comprehensive insight into today's topic. And the webinar was indeed very candid and articulate, and how you have informed us and given an education about the victim compensation scheme and how it is a quasi-judicial procedure, and it was so informative, and with the procedural part has wonderfully explained the victimology as well as the witness protection. And I would also, not only this, but I would also like to thank our participants of this webinar in this short journey with the Shreya ma'am in today's topic. Thank you for being with us, and we'd like to have many, many more informative webinars with you, ma'am, in future. Thank you so much. Over to you, Nitesh.
I think Nitesh, you're mute.
So if the host is mute, that would become very difficult for organizing the webinar. So it is always the organizer's duty to see everybody is mute, and by the same time, important is also that I should also remain mute while the speaker is speaking. So with ending a good note on the today's topic, I would like to thank Ms. Shreya Arora Mehta ma'am, who has immediately accepted to my invitation when I extended her to speak on our platform and educate and bring light on the subject which is not been covered in many books. So today you have spoken a lot about the victim compensation, their representation, and as well as this vulnerable witness, which is also very important to keep in mind while we practice in the courts. So last but not the least, I would like to thank Shreya Arora Mehta ma'am from the bottom of my heart, and for having talked to us on this very important issue today. And one small thing I would like to share, that right from the initial days of my practice and seeing Shreya ma'am as a law researcher also, we have seen her in the courts being MM, we have seen her being the civil judge, and now seeing her today as the Secretary of Delhi Legal Services Authority. I think you have been doing a mind-blowing job by sitting there, and I say that your sitting there is much required to improve the necessity requirements. Thank you so much, Shreya.
Thank you so much, Nitesh. Thank you, Hazel. Thank you, Jyoti. Thank you, Takshi. Thank you to all the organizers. Read the scheme and enjoy insight over the scheme. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.